Welcome to the Let's Fix Construction podcast. Let's Fix Construction is an avenue to offer creative solutions, separate myths from facts, and erase misconceptions about the architecture, engineering, and construction industry.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's fix you and me. Every broken thing that we can see, all the pain and all the misery. Let's start tomorrow.
Let's join your Let's Fix Construction co-hosts, Eric Lussier and Cherise Lakeside.
Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to another edition of the Let's Fix Construction podcast. Today is episode 3. Thank you very much for tuning in. And this week we're going to talk about architectural specifications, and namely Division 1. Hopefully everyone had the chance to read our latest post on the Let's Fix Construction blog. It's called Division 1, the Project Roadmap. And my partner in crime, Cherise Lakeside, actually penned that piece. And if you haven't had the chance to read it, we do encourage you to go over and check it out right now. You can go to letsfixconstruction.com and it'll be the latest article, well, as of this week, that you'll see on our homepage. So you can go jump over there right now. We'll give you a couple seconds. Ready, go. Okay. So hopefully you paused the podcast and you've jumped back over, and we're going to kind of continue the conversation here because with a lot of our conversations that we have at Let's Fix Construction, these pieces of information are really not being discussed. They're really missing in the industry. It's a lot of the reasons why Cherise and I, well, namely started letsfixconstruction.com, but also have penned some of the pieces that we have on our blog and are talked in this podcast about items that are not discussed commonly in the industry. And one of them is a lot of the architectural specifications that are very, very vital to the contract documents. And Division 1 is, as Cherise titled her latest blog post, the Project Roadmap. Now, before we get into a little bit more about Division 1, we're going to talk a little bit about architectural specifications, and namely, for those of you who do not know, we'll start with what the specifications are. And the AIA A201 2017 contract actually defines specifications are the portion of the contract documents consisting of the written requirements for materials, equipment, systems, standards, and workmanship for the work and performance of related services. And of course, we all know, if you're familiar with architectural specifications, are broken up into page format, section format, and defined through master format through 49 sections. And CSI leads the way as per those sections. And that's what we're going to talk a little bit about today is the Division 1 general requirements. And before we get into that, just a quick little summary on what is Division 1. Our friend Liz O'Sullivan, a specifier in Denver, nicely defines Division 1 as it expands upon the requirements in the agreement and the conditions of the contract. It specifies administrative requirements, procedural requirements, temporary facilities and controls, and performance requirements. Division 1 applies to all of the technical sections in Divisions 2 through 49. I have with me, of course, my partner in crime, as I said, Cherise Lakeside. She is a longtime architectural specifier, and she's going to be able to talk a lot more about the details of Division 1, what goes into it, why it's important, and one of the reasons why she started talking more and more about Division 1 outside of the umbrella, let's say. So, Cherise, why don't you talk a little bit more about Division 1?
Well, one of the things that I've found throughout my career is that I've had the unique opportunity to work in more than one discipline. I've worked in architecture, I've worked in MEP engineering, and I've worked in construction. And when I switched to MEP engineering after the economy did a lovely tank in 2008, I had the opportunity to work with the documents from a different viewpoint. And a very big life lesson or work lesson at the time that not everybody works with the documents the same way, nor does everybody see the same things. And I found that most consultants have a very, I don't want to call it tunnel vision, but a very small view of what they see of the documents. They work on their specific divisions, but the architect is often not sharing all of the Division I requirements with all of the consultants on the team. I had an opportunity to take my architectural experience at the consulting firm that I worked at and share some of that knowledge to help protect the firm and protect the engineers and have them understand so that they weren't creating conflicts in their own documents. And so I taught my first Specs 101 class at that firm, and some really interesting and amazing questions came out. And that's when I think it really became clear to me that people who are outside of the architecture discipline are not seeing everything, and nobody's teaching them these rules for their project. And so they're making mistakes that in any design contract, it's usually going to be front loaded, that contract, which means you make the least amount of money during the construction phase, but yet that's where we have the most problems. And so if you make these mistakes early in design, you are going to just have a huge time suck during construction. So that's kind of what started this whole process of talking to disciplines outside of architecture. But in the meantime, I've discovered that younger professionals or architecture staff that maybe haven't had to do CA or haven't had to write specs or be involved in planning specs don't have this knowledge either. And if you don't know the rules of your project, you can't administer it properly. And in the blog, I give an example, which I won't go into. You can go read it if you like, of an architecture professional who processed 40 substitution requests in the first month of construction because she didn't understand that there were rules defined in her contract documents. And I've heard more situations like that than I can count. Another good example is people making a change on a submittal, an architect making a change on a submittal when it's submitted from the contractor. But that submittal is not a contract document. If you had read your Division I documents, you would understand exactly how you needed to submit a submittal and how you needed to change it so it would become a contract document and everybody would be protected by the contract. So those are just a couple of the things I started noticing the more and more I taught this class to different groups. And there were some groups, I taught the class to an apprenticeship program, electrical apprenticeship program, that had never heard of Division I at all. And I'm not exactly sure how you can appropriately build a project or be a part of a project from any discipline if you don't know that exists and what those rules are. So I felt it was important to take a couple of opportunities, us doing this podcast and writing the blog and teaching the class, to help get this information out there and more widely known.
Getting this information out there is certainly key, and as you said, that is part of the blog. Well, I have found over the years, I've been doing this now for, let's say, I'm going on my 12th year, as a product rep for a sport flooring provider and also a subcontractor. I'm involved in the project documents quite a bit. Well, I fall in Division IX, so as a, let's say, a novice in the industry, of course, I was focused only really on Division IX. I'd get my project documents from McGraw-Hill Dodge. We were a member there, and that's where we got our documents, and I'd just dive into Division IX. That's all I was really focused on, and mainly 096566, resilient athletic flooring, and that's where I was bidding from. And if I wasn't getting them from there, I was getting an invitation from a general contractor. And the general contractor, I would find, would spoon feed us really only items that he found pertinent, and that was usually just our specification section. They're not going to feed us information that they deem, it's tough to say. You know, I would say, I'd hate to think that they're feeding us information that is not required, but they're also giving us information, the only information they really think we need. And had I not known any better, I would just go with that 096566 and bid from there. The best thing I did for my career was basically take my CSI CDT class with Mitch Miller of USA Architects. The Construction Document Technologist certificate basically opens up everybody's eyes to project documents and really what they're all about. And of course goes deep into Division I and how projects start and all the way through the life cycle. And it really showed me that, of course, project documents go much, much beyond Division IX for me, and they go through now it's Division 0 and Division 1, that I review to make sure I'm privy to all of the information that is out there that does affect me. And when I'm talking about information that affects me, namely substitution requests are right there in Division 1, allowances and alternates, that's extremely vital. All the time, part of my scope of work is done as an alternate, whether it's adding on to a multi-purpose room size or it's going as a different floor altogether. So it's very vital that I'm going in there and I'm looking at what's an alternate in there. So I was very frustrated when I realized that general contractors were not providing me with this information. Granted, nor was I asking, but I also feel like they were only providing me with the information that they thought I needed. So I was very, very thankful to basically leave with my CDT and know that I needed to actually go back and ask for that document and review it really from top to bottom and make sure that I wasn't missing out on any information that was affecting my bid, because that's exactly what a lot of this information is doing, is it's affecting my bid and how I'm preparing that to go to the general contractor. So what types of things are you seeing out there that are commonly missed that need to be witnessed by other parties in Division 1, Cherise?
Well, I think there's some really great ways we can mitigate this problem, but I think one of the biggest things that I've seen from my personal experience is more of things like consultants putting in CYA language into their specs because they don't know what's in the architect specs. They don't know what's in Division 1. Nobody's sharing it. A great example is I've seen many firms' MEP specs that will have substitution requirements in them. It is the architect's responsibility to write the rules for substitutions in Division 1. You'll see things like submittal procedures. It goes into it outside of Division 1, even into technical sections. My favorite one is access panels. But what the consultants will often do is, because they don't know what's in there, they will write language to protect themselves. And because they haven't ever had the proper training about documents, because they don't get it in school, and consultants especially don't get it on the job, because it's not their job to put the documents together. It's the architects. They put in all this language, which actually ends up being in conflict. They put in requirements that are defined in Division 1, but somebody is not sharing those requirements with them. Or they don't know if they're being put in at all, and they feel like they need to do that to protect themselves. And it usually causes more problems than it does solves them. And it definitely causes conflicts. I have found a conflict between consultant specifications in Division 1 in every single project spec I've ever picked up. So you tell me, what does that tell you? What do we need to do?
Well, we talked before, and we'll say it again, and we'll say it again and again. It all starts with proper communication, and the earlier the better. I think that was one of the things that came through. Actually, the first time I saw you speak in Nashville's Construct Conference was on architect and engineering consultant coordination. And the resounding theme of that program was communication, communication, communication. And this is the frustrating thing about our project delivery, at least the most common one out there, is, architects are working on these projects for, in some cases, years and years. The specifications are 1,000+ page manual. And when it all comes down to it, the general contractor and the bidding parties have to basically absorb 1,000+ pages in a couple of week window to bid the job and to deliver the owner the project that they want. And I'm not sure if revised project delivery methodology will help us with that, but one of the faults in the system is lack of time the contractors have out there, and the way that they need to funnel back their communication back to the architect for them to basically digest it and regurgitate it back out to the bidding contractor so that everybody has proper information. So the time crunch is a huge thing, and the consultants are seeing that as well. They're getting a time crunch because by the time that you as a designer puts on to them your bidding set, basically for them to input what they need to, their timeline to regurgitate that back to you to input it into your final bid set is a very, very finite amount of time. And getting people involved at an earlier point in time is going to help basically create better project documents. But we need to get everybody involved earlier and get everybody talking more openly about some of the issues that they're being faced with day to day. And we say we're not going to reinvent fix construction overnight, but by starting to talk about some of these items now, it's going to help our job better in 2018 and 2019 and the future. And if we start really at the bottom level, and the bottom level is Division 00, and especially here Division 1, the general requirements in the architectural specifications, it's going to make all of us do our job a little bit better and hopefully deliver a better project for the owner. We encourage everybody to go read the blog, at least start the communication, and that's, comment, suggest to us how we can make it better, perhaps how we can involve more parties to get involved at an earlier point in time, and actually the big thing is read Division 1, the general requirements. Are you getting it? Are you reviewing it? And if you are receiving it and are not reviewing it, how come? There's a really, really big disconnect there if you are bidding on a job and you are not reading these documents, because you're placing a lot of liability on yourself by perhaps binding yourself into a contract that you are not aware of all factors of. Any last round of comments before we wrap up this quick edition of the podcast, Cherise?
I think the last thing I would like to add is there are a lot of ways that we can improve this. And just a short, quick list. How about for the architect, meeting with your consultant very early in the design process, not when we're down to the deadlines, and having a checklist. I created one for my last firm, a checklist of items that are typically in conflict. Throw a standard Division 1 your firm uses on the table and go over it for an hour. That alone would change the game. Maybe put a requirement in your specifications for document distribution in Division 1 that says the contractor has to distribute a copy of Division 1 to every sub that gets copies of the document that bids. There's something right there. Even if they don't read it, at least they had it in their hand. You get familiar with a Division 1, it might be a little painful the first few times until you kind of get the groove, but once you get that groove, you know what to look for. You know what things are important to you in your discipline. There are a lot of different ways I think that we can mitigate this problem and get people on the same page. Maybe go teach a group of subcontractors or a group of consultants, different consultants. The more that we kind of take our knowledge and share it instead of sitting in our bubble, I think the more that this situation will improve.
Excellent. Is that coordination checklist available to the general public?
It is not. I would probably be willing to share it. It was written pretty specifically for my firm at the time. But one thing that it does have that I'd be happy to recreate and put up on our site is just a list of typical coordination issues that you could massage into a checklist that works with your documents. A whole list of different things that an architect should be talking to their consultants about.
I think that is a blog post and a podcast for another day. I think that information is needed, and I think you've got some homework, man.
Wonderful.
Thank you very much for tuning in to another edition of the Let's Fix Construction podcast. Please check us out on the web at letsfixconstruction.com, and we look forward to talking to you soon.
Thank you for listening to the Let's Fix Construction podcast. To hear other episodes, read our blogs from dozens of collaborators, and see where we'll be hosting our next live workshop, please visit letsfixconstruction.com. We're always looking for AEC professionals to contribute their industry solutions. To offer your support as a blogger or podcast guest, contact letsfixconstruction@gmail.com.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's fix you and me every broken thing that we can see, all the pain and all the misery. Let's start tomorrow. Let's build you and me a towering impossibility, a thing of art, a thing of beauty we can show. If it don't matter if it's new or old, and we don't have to wait until we're told. Let's fix it now before the iron's cold. We'll fix it once, we'll fix it thrice, as many times till it stays nice. A wondrous world this would be. Let's fix it, you and me. If all you see is what cannot be done, you'll surely miss out on the joyous fun. So come with me and we'll reject no one. I trust you know this ain't no joke. Let's pull together all the folk and we'll work on life's mystery. Let's fix it, you and me.